Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live event or a webcast, which is focused around the new project and the Power Platform and how we can improve and modernize how people work with anything from projects, work in general, portfolios, programs, those sorts of things. So for the next couple of hours, we'll be introducing you to the new platform that has been made by Microsoft for PPM disciplines, and also hear a little bit from real customer cases, and also with an intro from Microsoft. So just before we get started, I just briefly wanted to touch base with you all on saying, first of all, thank you for joining. I know it's special times, and I also know that some are sitting at home, some are probably not. But in general, I think what the numbers I have in front of me are showing is that there's a big focus on especially project portfolio management right now, also during Corona or COVID-19. And today we have more than 100 people participating from 18 different countries and spanning 80 different companies. We also have roughly 10 other project partners, so thank you for joining as well. So a big crowd, and hopefully also lots of good questions from all of you throughout the presentation and at the very end where we have room for Q&A. Now, my background, for those who don't know me, is that I've been working with Microsoft project management, especially the tool project, for the last 17 years in total. I have been certified in almost everything Microsoft has to offer, especially around project management. And therefore, I've also been a Microsoft MVP for the last, 10 years coming up this summer. I'm also a member of the advisory council to assist Microsoft with giving feedback and drive the direction for the future of project, which is also why I'm extremely happy that we now have a platform for project management rather than just one product. So I have been focusing on anything from PMI, Prince2, which is more like a European methodology standard, IPMA, and Scaled Agile most recently. So regardless of methodologies, I've sort of been there, and hopefully some of that learning can be put into play during this presentation today. The company, briefly on a one-pager, is a typical Microsoft project partner, or a partner to Microsoft, gold partner that is. We have won a few awards as well, been in business for the last 16 years, around 50 employees, and we work with some of the largest, but also mid-sized companies across different time zones in most of the world. We are based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and also have offices other places in Denmark and in Amsterdam in the Netherlands as well, or Schiphol actually. We offer solutions, some of that you'll see today. Obviously consulting, where I can sort of emphasize that hackathons has been I think a really big thing for most of our customers in the past 12 months. Everyone has some sort of a business pain they would like to get solved or get rid of. But before they go in investing heavily on that specific topic, most would like to try it out to see if we can actually build something in very short time, sometimes a few days. So that plus advisory, general configuration of the Microsoft platform to support project portfolio management. And then we have our products presented, Team Planner and Power PPM. You'll learn more about those in this presentation. And obviously customer care and support. More than 50 customers have a rather large support agreement with us. So we support first, second, and third level of users using project and portfolio management tools from Microsoft. So that was as brief as I could do it. We have served quite a lot of customers in the past. Some of the names you might know, some you might not know. But it's all of that we have finally been able to encapsulate into one solution, which wasn't really possible in the past, and that now is ready for you to try out, which you'll learn more about at the end of the presentation. But also obviously to get up and running much faster, sometimes in a matter of weeks rather than a matter of months. So lots have changed, and I think experience is what really matters in these times, and also why we are extremely satisfied and eager to get started with showing you actually what we built. So the session today is sort of built in these small blocks. In just a few seconds, I'll hand it over to Microsoft with a welcome. Then I'm gonna give an intro to the new platform for work. Then live demonstrating how the new project works together with what we call Power PPM. Then we have a case from FLSmidth, both an introduction to the company and obviously how they have been using the new project for the web with the Power Platform. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes at the very end explaining how to claim your trial if you want to try it out. and then we have room for Q&A. There's also the option of asking questions throughout the presentation. They will be managed by a producer, Jonathan, sitting right across from me. So feel free to shoot with any question you might have. Some will be answered on the fly, and some will be saved for later discussions and when we open up the mics at the very end. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jeff. First of all, welcome and thank you for joining. And feel free to share your mind.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for letting me join your webcast. I think hopefully everyone's healthy and settling into a new focus on work and all of that. And I think it's a great context of change in the business sense that tools like Project and all of our work management tools are really being used in brand new use cases. And first and foremost, Microsoft will be the first to acknowledge that we offer a platform, and we rely very heavily on our best partners like Projectum to take that platform and focus in on the use cases that arise for each unique company and now for each unique situation. Peter said it well, is the way work gets done obviously has transformed. It's transformed over the past couple of years and now transformed over the past month or two. And we really recognize that the way that any tool or platform will be enabled is through just what was said: quick hackathons, rapid sprints, working within business departments with both formal and informal project managers. The nature of work continues to accelerate. I have the role, I work just outside of Boston, and I focus in the Northeast US. I have the opportunity to work with global accounts and really the privilege of talking to over 100 PMOs a year. And really the main message I always deliver is there's only 3 things that any project team really should focus on, whether you're a very large PMO or you're more of a focused delivery team, is first and foremost, you have to have visibility to the work. And if you can't create visibility to what is all the work in front of people, there's always an element of doubt and uncertainty and people's questioning what we're working on, what the priorities are. The second thing is the tool set or the platform has to support delivery. And what I mean by that, it used to be the term velocity, is really thinking about how do we keep our people busy and what are they busy on and do they feel productive when they sit at their desktop every day. And we really are focused on that at Microsoft, is making sure people have the choice of the tools that they work with and then rely on partners to really, configure that to work in the same fashion that the work is being performed. So visibility and velocity. And then lastly, which I think is most important as we're all very conscious of cost and effort right now, is resource management. We can all build beautiful schedules. We can talk about the methodologies we use, but the real ROI comes when we focus on the tool set and have an impact on the resources. The resources are either going to work better or you're going to get more work through that individual team member. So 3 things that I would encourage everyone on the call to think about today's presentation and how does it enable visibility, velocity, and then a better resource management, because resource management really is where the rubber hits the road. The last thing I wanted to share is a little bit of the vision Microsoft has. Things have progressed. A couple decades ago, Project Desktop was a huge tool set, and everybody that was a formally trained project manager probably had some capabilities in that tool set. What we're looking at now is that Microsoft's really in a different position. We're thinking about it as a platform of collaboration to support work management in general. That means some people are going to be very formally trained project managers. Some people are going to be more informal in the way they approach things. We really feel it's our responsibility to bring a work platform that allows tasks, schedules, and calendars to come together and deliver work better. And then the last thing I would focus on is that we're really interested in making sure that adoption occurs. It's not important for us to have the premier platform that addresses every use case. What we want to do is have a tool that you can work with partners like Projectum, or you can focus in on the DevOps tools we have Certainly Power Apps and Power BI is our new tool set. We want you to configure these tools to operate and work the way that you want to work, and really enable an organization to take responsibility for the exact way that the tools should be delivered. So the Projectum platform with PPM is really a broad-based application, but more importantly, you have to think about how can we configure this to address the specific use cases. So I love joining webinars where we're bringing forward specific customer case studies, because it's the case studies that exemplify how the tool can actually be put in motion to do the three things I mentioned: visibility, velocity, and resource management. And if we all focus on that, I think we'll be very successful. You have a great, capable partner here with Projectum. And again, it's a matter of you working with them. Think about it as a quick hackathon. What are we going to do this week, in the next 6 weeks, to really make this tool useful? Microsoft, we're here as a resource to you. There's a role like mine, what we call a solution specialist in each region. You can call on them to ask for support. We're going to engage partners. We're going to think of free trials. We're going to think of dashboards in a day or Power Apps in a day, specific initiatives that are quick, impacting ways that you can take the tools and make better use of them. So again, I'm looking forward to the content today. I'll rejoin us at the end of the call, and I'll turn it back over to Peter and his team to share what great successes have been done with the Project and Power Apps platform at Microsoft. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for letting me sit in on the webinar. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. And happy that we have this new vision. I think all of us, both Microsoft and partners, it's all about supporting the customers' business models, which are always unique, especially the large organizations. If it was just a copy of each other's business models, we wouldn't really be competing. So I think essentially what is happening is that the differentiator going forward is to have a unique business model, which means that the supportive tools have to support that business model and not just an out-of-the-box business model. So hopefully we can further emphasize that in the rest of the presentation. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and going back to this screen and just checking that we have it soon so all can see it. I'll wait a little bit. I have to do a little upload, I guess. And it's there. Great. So platform for PPM is really the big news here. Obviously, we have something called Project as well, which is a whole new way of working with your projects and breaking down your work. But essentially what it really means is that we now have a full platform that supports any kind of capability or process that is going on when it comes to managing work. And managing work is obviously much more than just projects. It's portfolios, it's risks, ideas, change management, stakeholder management. There are so many elements of doing project management today, or work management. Also in the agile world, where we have to suddenly break down things into sprints, as Jeff mentioned, and all of this is well, could be complex if one product had to cover all, which is why we now have a platform for PPM. And that platform is called the Power Platform, sorry, in case you're new to this. Let me just remove this little thing at the right corner here. There we go. So to make a one-pager out of explaining something that is actually quite extensive and is in itself could host, I think, a 2-day event. From a user's perspective, what is really essential about having what is called the Microsoft Power Platform as the foundation in comparison to in the past with SharePoint is that first and foremost, we have mobile support all the way through out of the box. So if I want to use my cell phone here, I will just open it up. It launches. Actually, here you can see just quickly what we call Power PPM. And everything will just work on my phone or my tablet device without having thought about it. That's just the thing that the Power Platform offers. We have built-in help guides, which makes sure that users don't have to find that work document describing how to work with a stage gate model, for instance, or creating a new risk. So we can embed videos of what we call learning paths. So you can sort of guide users on the screen from A to Z without any code at all. It's ready for Teams. So everything I'll show today will work in Teams out of the box. The whole security layer around Teams is called groups. And every time you create a project or any other element, it can be related or will be related to a certain group, which means that security can also be combined with the security going on in Teams.
Auditing and security, GDPR standards, any kind of ISO certifications are already compliant out of the box. But when it comes to auditing, we now also have auditing all the way through to the tasks level. So every time something changes, it will be captured and stored for logging history. AI and machine learning is a capability that is now embedded and built into the solution, so that without understanding how to write R code, for instance, or Python, you can actually go in and find relevant data and harvest it, and then do trend analysis on it or what if scenarios using AI. So that's a really cool thing. And business integration as well is the ability certainly to capture and bring in any kind of data from any kind of system as a service. So the era of building integrations, typically done by us or similar partners, writing .NET code and all that, is gone. Those days are over. Today, it's a matter of doing what is called a data flow, where we can point to a spreadsheet or anything that we have, an API or web service somewhere, with standard connectors out of the box as well, and just bring in the data, wash it, and have it put into our projects where it should be going into. Everything will be stored in what we call the common data service, which is the really big news here. So no matter what change you do or what configuration you set up in the Power App, all the data will be going into what is called the common data service. And the common data service uses the same naming convention, which is called the common data model, which is an open standard, which is also supported by companies like Adobe or even SAP, which makes it much easier to integrate data back and forth between those different systems. RPA or process automation is something that is also supported out of the box, but on all the different levels, which means it's not just stage gates for projects anymore. There can be a stage gate for anything, creating a risk or identifying it or closing it. There can be something like doing an investment proposal that also needs to go through a certain process. And all of these different handshakes can be digitally supported, but also controlled from a governance perspective out of the box. And then finally, as talked about quite a lot already, the business model support. We know that people work differently. So going from idea or business case or contract to final product goes through different steps that are typically never the same. Stages are typically quite the same, but what goes on within each stage is very unique. And therefore, being able to tailor that whole work process without writing code, so something that you can also as customers do yourselves, is super important. I think that the PMO will be even more relevant with this platform going forward than we've seen in the past, because they can now fully support and do changes themselves. And then finally, the ability to plan top down. So for instance, setting up your portfolios in containers before you shovel in your projects or your work, we can now do. So you can now set aside a strategy with a certain amount of money behind it, and then later on add in those projects or create projects and link it to that strategy. So you have that top down and bottom up analysis that has been really tricky in the past with the SharePoint approach and Project Online approach we had. So all in all, it's low code and high productivity, sort of out of the box. And with the solution we'll show you later, you'll see that you can get up and running in really, really short time and still have all these rather advanced capabilities injected into your organization. So from a product ecosystem, then the Power Platform is obviously not one product, it's a platform. So essentially we have different tooling supporting different roles and functions, and in this case it's sort of trimmed for the project portfolio space. If we look at Office 365, that sort of represents Teams, where we are hosting this meeting in, managing your tasks, accessing documents or writing documents using Office or Outlook even. We have Power Apps and our solution on top of it called Power PPM, which is sort of like creating portfolios, tracking them, programs, and essentially having that all up PMO hub where you can go in and find out what's going on with your work. Then we have Azure DevOps, which is the way to break down your agile work even further into boards or increments or sprints using Kanban and backlogs and work items from features all the way through to bugs. If you don't use DevOps, quite often we see people are using Jira or similar. Of course, there are also the ability to connect to that. We've done that many times, and it's again using the new data flow engine, so we don't really have to write any code to pull in that information. The same thing applies for SAP. If you have that as your ERP system, we can track actual cost or plan budgets and pull that into the system as well. Then we have Power BI, which I think most know about already, to create your reports in and have them shown as dashboards and even set up alerts so that when something happens, we can have a trigger that can send an email or notification to various stakeholders and let them know what's going on. And then we have the new project, which is obviously about planning your work, breaking down your work using a VBS structure, phases, milestones, tasks, linking them together, finish to start. And now we can also do it from an agile perspective. So we actually have a Kanban board very similar to what you're used to maybe in Planner, because it is the same team behind the new project UI. That was the same team who gave you Planner. So you'll see some similarities there. And then we have something called Team Planner up here, which is actually an add-in for Microsoft Teams, where you can go in and do resource requests. So asking for certain roles in FTEs or hours over a certain amount of time, and replacing those, which is something the line managers would do, or resource managers, with real named individuals, and balance their workload so that they're not over allocated. So all of these things combined gives you what I would describe as a very modern approach to managing work, and not forcing any individuals into a tool that they don't feel comfortable using. So the right tool for the right individual, but with all data going into the same bucket called Common Data Service for ETL reporting. Then from a visions perspective, again, trying to emphasize the roles and the tools and the capabilities. If we look at the different roles, right here we have agile team managers, informal project managers, those with a formal title of a project manager, and then finally the resource managers. Then in the very center of it, we have the new project. And I'll get back to, of course, showing you how that works. And around that, we have then added around the schedule all these portfolio and program management capabilities and more. We call that Power PPM. Then on the left side, we have obviously Azure DevOps or Jira to connect into that agile way of breaking down your work even further and writing back, for instance, the status on your features or sprints into your project overview. On the right-hand side, we have what we call Team Planner. Again, the resource managers are receiving requests and then they are giving allocations in return. And then end of day, we have lots of people down here who are individuals who need to manage everything that's going on from their perspective. So we believe that the future for them will be in Microsoft Teams and not going in and out of 5 different systems. So that's sort of the simplest way of explaining how we see the whole organizational setup from a tooling perspective. That brings me to what we also call control agility, which is actually a trademark that we have here in the company as well. It's a framework, proven framework for how to capture both agile and traditional way of working into one, you can say, solution almost, without losing the overview. That's why we call it controlled agility. And again, first off, at the very top, we have what we call portfolio management discipline. That is typically the same with or without being agile. There are some that are scaled agile, but even there you actually have something called business cases or portfolio epics. So end of day, you'll always have some vision somewhere which is described in strategy or drivers, and you have a management group who would like to do performance measurement on that strategy execution. So we have these different disciplines up here that are supported, and also a stage gate model that can be applied in many different variances according to the project model or project type. Then further down, we have what we can call project management or work management skills or disciplines. Again, managing scope, cost, benefits, and those sorts of things. And then on each side of this, with or without being agile, we have resource management as a thing that is relevant for any kind of work, especially in these times where people are looking into reprioritizing their work. Then we need to know our capacity and the current demand, which is, again, not the same thing as doing resource allocation to a task. It goes on typically way before, even in the ideation phase. And it's also something that has to do with your operations and your support model. So it's not just your project work that needs to be planned. So that's why we have resource management as a thing on this side. On the left side, we have time tracking. So actual work, remaining work, those sorts of things. Even if it doesn't make a lot of sense for agile teams, then for some organizations, it's really a compliance issue to do time sheeting, because you might end up having to activate your investments or your CapEx projects, even though they're agile, into your financial statements. And in some countries, law tells you that you have to then capture time, even though it's agile. So for that reason, we believe that also time tracking is relevant with or without being agile. And then we are at the point where we want to break down our work into tasks. And there we have something we describe as plan-driven, which is your typical waterfall, traditional way of planning work. And then you have what is called change-driven, where you have your backlog. So obviously not exactly the same thing. And then we have statusing and collaboration at the very bottom. Again, that's the individual. And on the right-hand side, you just saw that we are able to capture both agile and regular work and bring it into one overview. Because even in agile, we have resources allocated in fixed teams times a certain rate that gives you cost per week, cost per day, cost per month, which is exactly the same thing we have with traditional projects on the left side. So bringing those two worlds together and rolling up that data will give you an overview on what have we spent, what has been allocated, how far are we, and then map that against your strategy to track performance. So that's sort of the quick intro to how we define controlled agility and how we implement the way of working. From a licensing perspective, things can look different. Here's an example on the different tools that are relevant on the different levels. There'll be more on that at the very end of the presentation as well. So going more into the live demonstration, before I just open up my browser here, then again, there's a little intro. The new project for the web consists of 4, I think, key elements that I want to give an intro to first of all. We now have a grid view, which is sort of the same way as you would work in Excel. We also have what is called the board view, which looks a lot like Planner. Also, it has some more capabilities, and you're able to report across it, unlike Planner. But again, we have this now as a standard thing inside Project for the web. We still have Gantt views, obviously, which is something Planner does not have for sure, with the finish to start constraints, tracking progress, and those sorts of things. And we also have roadmaps, which is the capability to roll up the sum of many projects, including your Azure DevOps projects. Select a few tasks, bring them into one overview, and track them against your top-down, as you can see up here, defined key deliverable dates or similar. So this would be your simple approach to what is the new project for the web from a user's perspective. Then when it comes to what we have added around the new project, we call that Power PPM. Obviously, it's a Power App, but it's predefined by us with lots of custom controls. Different accelerators, I would call it, have been added into it, such as a risk matrix, financial grids that can be time-phased, those sorts of things, so that nobody needs to, again, write any code. And again, as mentioned in the beginning, it works on any screen. That's how I describe it. So it could be an iPad, it could be an iPhone, or it could be a laptop. Doesn't really matter. And there are different key elements that we'll cover in some of the demonstration. Just briefly touching on it in this session. Then first of all, we have ideation. So there's a place to bring in new ideas, score them, make voting on them, and then again, pulling that out into a Power BI report to see which idea supports which company directions, bubble charts, all these different sorts of reports. And you can also build your own reports, of course. Then we can convert any idea into a real business case or a product, or sorry, a project, like in this case. So we call that a business case, where we can go in and do analysis on how much money are we spending on certain initiatives. Are we spending enough or too little or too much? So you probably have seen that in the past with Project Online, if you have tried that, where you have your portfolio simulation, where you could also sort of see how you're spending your money versus how you should be spending your money. Again, we have the stage gate model. We have different forms where we can add in different checklists and make sure we have defined the steering group, a sponsor is secured, track the effort completed, effort remaining, all those sorts of things that I'll show you live. We have financial forecasting. So custom control again for breaking down into budgets, actual cost, forecast, benefits into months and years, and in real time you can see a chart showing the visualization of those data sets. And again, of course, we can pull that into Power BI for easy, for instance, financial forecasting or cost variance tracking if needed. Risk management is again also going on in the same application. You don't go to any SharePoint site for that. Everything goes into one bucket, so you also stay on the same screen as a project manager. So here we've added a risk matrix where you can quickly create new risks and see where they are placed inside the matrix, and obviously pull that information out as well into any Power BI report that you might have in your organization. KPIs as well have been added, so red, green, yellow, amber, green, or whatever we call it. I think personally that the days of just writing red, green, yellow is over. We have to be a little bit more specific on what yellow means. And for that reason, what we've done now is a configurable approach to defining, for instance, if cost is over or under spending and to how many percentages. And based on that, it will give you a color. I'll show you that live also how that works. But we store data in numbers so we can do math on it. But from a user's perspective, we want to have them select from text experience. For instance, if you are selecting resources to be read, that means they are unavailable. Or if quality is read, it means there are many issues, so that it makes more sense for the end user. Changes and issues, also something we can capture now with a workflow behind it, an approval process behind it, and track and see how many issues have been made or how many change requests, are they approved or are they not? And even the default approver will be tagged because the sponsor will also be the approver of change requests. So all these different rules are something that the Power Platform just seamlessly makes work together without any coding or any other kind of hassle for that matter. Status reporting as well. We've also made sure that we can export in real time to not just Word, but also PowerPoint, and even render the out-of-the-box charts in your PowerPoints without the use of code. That means that if you can build a beautiful PowerPoint for status reporting, most of you can, I've seen a lot, then now we can actually get them become alive or brought to life by injecting the data in real time in a matter of seconds from when you hit the save button or generate report button in the Power PPM solution. So that's also a thing that has been really requested by a lot. Plus, we can snapshot data by just a button as many times as you would like and do that trend analysis or burn down analysis. Portfolios and programs are also supported. So we can create portfolios top down or programs, then select our projects or in the opposite order, doesn't matter, and pull that information out obviously into to Power BI. We have demand and capacity planning. That's where we have the solution called Team Planner, where, as you can see here inside Teams, line managers can go in, find the requests or the different projects that are pending some sort of attention, and then you just drag and drop your resources using your finger or your mouse, and suddenly project managers will have their resource pool generated for them, and then they can start planning work with them. And again, of course, we can pull that information out into Power BI for heat map analysis and those sorts of things. We also have built some timesheet capabilities based on also Power Apps so that users can track time, submit periods, have them closed or approved, and then see actual work popping up next to where work has been planned. Also something that a lot have interest in. Then deliverables and dependencies, which sort of was there also in Project Online, but now we've brought it back to life. But in this case, again, everything goes on in the same database and on the same screen. So when you create a deliverable, you can quickly capture that and convert that into a dependency if you are running another project. I'll show a little bit of that later as well and how nice that works. You can even track if you are early or late as a standard because things are always synchronized. And tag that also against specific tasks in the plan so we can capture if a task is slipping. Then governance and auditing. As mentioned in the beginning, we have stage gate applied on every kind of work entity. Plus we have the ability to track every change that goes on inside the system. And finally, machine learning and AI capabilities to, for instance, predict if a task is going to be late based on the task name or the resource allocated, and comparing that to all the other data information we have inside our common data service from the past. And remember, right now, we're not just looking at, in this case, data as is, but data with all the changes that have been captured by the auditing engine. So I would say that in a matter of hopefully months, you'll have some relevant data and you can start building different AI analysis or machine learning analysis on those data sets to get you better predictions. And then we have an upcoming feature that will soon be available as well, hopefully around summer, which is what we will call a what if, where you can go in and add projects above or below the line, change them in terms of starting time or finish time, or extend them or shorten them. And then using Power BI and not hard-coded visuals, showcase in real time the impact of what you just did. So we really wanted to build this for quite a while, but we wanted to do it with standard toolings, in this case Power BI and real-time data access. And we have a really nice working prototype right now. And again, something to expect a lot from in the in the coming few months. And that brings me to my demo. We don't have time to cover everything, so I'm going to start off by showing a little bit about the reporting, then how to take an idea to a business case. Being the project manager, we'll spend lots of time there. Being a resource manager, going into teams, doing that allocation, working inside teams in general, and then strategic planning, which is a matter of setting up your strategy or your portfolio buckets and making sure that you are aligned with what is actually the business targets versus your projects that are running. So just briefly taking a little sip here. Then let me just switch to my browser here and look again at the producer to be sure that people can see my screen.
They can see it, and we also have one question if you want to.
There's time for a question. Bring it up.
So the question is from Carl Magnus, who says, is there or will there be a possibility through AI to learn from previous projects to support the project manager in building a suitable project plan, or even calculate a final delivery date given that certain data and organization specific information is provided or available?
Yes. So the question is, can we use AI to predict when a project will, for instance, finish in terms of a prediction rather than what I'm giving as input? And I think the question is spot on in what people are looking for. And yes, there's also a heavy need for having enough data to give you that answer. And I think first of all, we can do this more or less out of the box by building a machine learning model, which is how you do it, which is to some extent just following a guide. Then it will give you the output from running what is called an analysis and tell you if you have enough data to sort of support that way of thinking. And sometimes you'll get the answer that is no, and sometimes you'll get the yes, thumbs up. And then you can train your system by bringing more demo data or example data into the engine, and it will become stronger and stronger. And at some point, you'll go beyond what is called the 50 mark score, the 50 point, which is the system that's running in machine learning here, which tells you that we are now at a position where the system can advise you better than you can guess yourself. But to get to that is a matter of how much data you have already that you can bring into the model that you're using. And if you don't have enough data, it will complain about it. So it's not an easy yes or no answer, but yeah, if you have a lot of data and you bring it into the common data service, I would expect that you can find at least a handful of examples where machine learning can assist you. But it's not as easy as saying yes or no. More questions? Okay, thanks. Then right now we're inside, again, a Power App, a model-driven Power App. We call this Power PPM and have had that all the way since the fall last year, just before the new project came out. Here you'll find a nice looking front page that can be customized. In my case, showing you a portfolio overview, programs, project overview, what if, resource planning, reporting, and portfolio reporting. So different types of reports. As I mentioned, we also have the building help guide. We won't spend too much time on that, but I think it's relevant to mention that if I click here, then based on the screen I'm at, it will tell me different things that you can do yourself. So for instance, tips and pointers, use the homepage button or use the sitemap or path tracker to find where you are. And if I change my screen, for instance, by going to the project's overview like this, then again, clicking here will bring me a new help pane where I can have different sections showing me how to do different things, such as add a new project, click here, and it tells me click there. You could also embed videos from YouTube or internal videos from Stream right inside this help pane. All of this configurable by just clicking here if you have the role to do it, clicking edit, and then you are in almost a word editor where you can then build as a PMO function that nice looking user guide and not having them go to these old dusty sometimes Word documents that you have created somewhere. Now, switching back to where I came from, then initially what we have to look into, and I just have to remember all these steps so that I'm not going to do it and run out of time. Just a second. We should have that right here. So we're going to start off with the reporting, and most of you are probably familiar with Power BI already, but what you probably don't know is that Power BI can also be embedded inside Power Apps in a really useful way. So that if I go down here to Portfolio Report and open this one up, you'll see a Power BI report right inside the application with security added to it, so that it knows already that I am who I am, so that I'm allowed to open it up. But next, it also, because of common data service, only shows me the data that I'm allowed to see. You don't even need to go in and build what is called row level security. It's rather technical, but for quite a lot of companies, they've heard about that before. So if I access the data coming from common data service, part of the Power Platform, I will only see what I'm allowed to see based on my role out of the box. And I think that's a big new thing that most haven't had in Project Online days, at least. Then besides that, we can have different sections shown here. So strategy, portfolio dashboard, financials, lots of different things. We'll cover some of them right now. And I think for those who are not into hardcore what-if scenarios, then just using Power BI can actually bring you lots of benefits, also from an analysis understanding of what your business is working on. And here's an example. So what you see here is the different business themes or portfolio buckets that we have and how much they are prioritized. So the UN sustainability goals are relevant priority-wise by 35.91%. Right now, all up, we are spending 44.44% of our money on that. Even worse, in the next generation products, which is super important for us, we are not spending any dollars on that initiative or portfolio at all. So that's definitely not good. Then we have better workplace, where we are overspending on revenue growth, and we even have 12% of our money going into the bucket of no themes. So that is something that I would typically click on and see what is going on in this bucket, and then get these projects brought up right here. And even though they're not associated necessarily with a specific theme, we can even see the strategic score and the benefits they are planning to bring to the organization to see if this makes sense. If we go back to it, we can also see all the projects that we are allowed to see and even group them by project by types, such as run or grow or transform, and then see how they sort of gets placed inside the matrix, or just looking at what's incoming of new demand, new requests that are not yet running projects. That would be all these three buckets here, and see what these are. And again, analyze them and say, okay, this has a high strategic score and brings the most benefits. So the EMEA digitalization project is definitely relevant. And we could also use down here just the portfolios and clicking on them and immediately see the different projects that we're running, the forecast variance, so the total variance across the entire portfolio in just one view. That's why I'm thinking that for some Power BI is a strong tool to do some sort of what-if scenarios without going into more advanced mode. Going to the next page, we also bring you something called Portfolio Dashboard, which shows you obviously by stage how many projects and money you're spending, actual cost and remaining cost by project, that's your total forecast, and then obviously by portfolio, where you can just click and briefly see this is the portfolio of 2020 strategy. These are the projects running, the KPI currently, a link to the project, and also start and finish, progress, effort in hours, tasks, overdue tasks, all of these things coming from your new project schedule. So super useful and very easy to use. On the portfolio financial side, that's a matter, at least also in what I'm used to work with, to track the highest cost variance from Z to A almost. So bring me that problematic project that is currently looking at a major overspend, which would be the water cleaning project. Then main office, then team building, all the way through to those that are actually maybe even in surplus down here. Then we can time phase it. So you have actual costs, approved budget, benefits or forecast, and especially approved budget versus forecast is sort of typically very interesting. And again, we can see it down here as well in years or even going down all the way through to months if you are interested in that. CapEx and OpEx, the same thing. Then we have the portfolio timeline, which is sort of what most are doing in PowerPoints. That can be brought into Power BI as well. This is actually an out-of-the-box report coming with the new project as well. So you can see start to end. And what we just did is added a program and portfolio elements to it, so you can just briefly get an all-up Gantt view on your 2020 operations portfolio or strategy portfolio or whatever it is, without having to go into any other system than this one. And then we could just keep going. We don't have too much time, so I'm just going to take a few examples. Ideation, which will show you ideas coming in, whether or not they're funded or not, and if they're funded, which project do they relate to. We can see it from a bubble chart as well, and we can also see spider web-wise in terms of projects that are already running, which direction are they going into primarily, and with the ideas coming in, which direction are those going into. And as you can see, there's a big push for a better workplace and UN sustainability, both in terms of new ideas and currently running projects. And next one, that's showing you the milestones from all your project plans, both upcoming and recent and completed. And then we could just keep going, which we don't have time to, so I'm going to stop here at Timesheet Insights, where of course you can track how much time has been spent by role, by person, by department on different areas of the business. So that was one example of a report. The other example could be a resource report, which is typically something else. So here we are more interested in finding out going forward, not looking backwards, but forward, if we are in deficit or in surplus in terms of capacity. And as you can see, it's all red in this example data set we have down here. Everyone is overbooked except for a few. And we can also see over time when we have the most availability and which roles are available. We could then filter by department or by resource group, external, internal, different calendars, or even your resource breakdown structure, if that was in place. I don't have that in my system here. We could also look into it from a resource insights perspective, where it shows you a little bit more than the other one. So this is sort of the forecast on your different buckets for work, the actual work right now and the remaining work, and also grouped by project type. And then we have many other different detailed reports. And this one will show you from a personal perspective or one role selected, how is that person's total workload right now, which projects are driving the workload, and again, demand versus capacity over time. And I think this is, again, something that most resource managers would be interested in, to find out which person or individual are working how much and on what are they working on. And then we could keep going, which you don't have time to do, but the final thing to show you in terms of reporting is the decomposition tree, which I think is a really useful standard feature in Power BI, where we can now look into how we're spending money, as in this example. So the assignment work that we have going on, clicking on, for instance, this project type will show that it's the resource group, sales and marketing, then operations that are spending that money, and then we have lots in the blank bucket. But let's look at operations. That would be Nesta Wilk, who is spending that amount of hours on this initiative or the sum of initiatives. We can click on facilities management, we can click on agile, infrastructure projects, and then quickly find out who is doing what in the different buckets, again, for further analysis. And that sort of covers, I think, what I had time to show you in terms of reporting. And obviously remember that this will work also from inside Microsoft Teams. So going back to where we came from here, then the next thing to show is a matter of bringing in an idea and making it become a business case or a project in the new project. So going back to the overview here and clicking home, we'll go to business ideas down here. So that's a repository or an entity that we've created where you can quickly go in and say new. And then do the, we can just use Jeff's hometown, Boston demo as the name for the idea. Make a description, my super idea description. And link it perhaps to a business theme by just selecting a theme. And these themes comes from the strategic themes bucket over here, which someone else probably would manage. I'm allowed to also create new themes because I'm the admin, but otherwise I could just select one. I could say better workplace. And immediately when I select that, it will show you what better workplace actually means and bring up that data in read-only, of course, so you have an idea about what you're actually associating yourselves with. Then we can add an investment of 550,000 that I expect to use, and benefits might be 3 million. Time to ROI might be 18 months. And if we wanted to, we could have different people coming in and voting it. So that's why we have votes, count of votes up here. And at some point, you might click the save button and see some sort of an impact analysis on this project being good or bad. We can then have a stage gate model, moving it to the next one called review, where some will have to go in and review it. And if they feel like it, they can then fund it by clicking here or up here, because it's a requirement to move ahead. So notice this one says not funded over here, but if I click yes, we are now very close to becoming active, as in having an active project. And down here, we can now say that the guy funded it, or the woman in this case, was Adele. So now we're ready. We have a sponsor. We have an idea captured. And now we want to create a project. So when I click create as project here and hit the save button, in a matter of split seconds, it will create the new project and return the link to me. Notice how fast this was. This was a 1 second exercise, if not less. So when I click Boston demo now, I'm going straight into the project, which is already created in just a second. And it already captured who is the sponsor, what are the benefits, what's the description, and what's the name. We could bring in as much data as you wanted to in just 1 second by the click of a button, which means that the relationship between ideas and projects, in my opinion, are sort of an out-of-the-box experience with the new Power Platform. So really, really useful. Then I can go in, and now we're already going into the little bucket of project management, and add, for instance, more example text on the description. And maybe I'm not good at writing text, so I can even have small lamps showing that there are example text, such as in this case. This is how to write a good description text, for instance. And if you think this is good, you could just apply it and then change it a little bit so it fits your needs. Steering group is added so that you can select based on predefined people that are part of the steering group committees. That we need Lydia, then we need Nesta, and then we need Megan or Gerhard and Megan here in this case. And if you wanted to, you could have a Teams channel being created while you are creating your project so that we know already now where to do our collaboration, manage the files, run these Teams meetings, and so forth. We can also link the project to different drivers, portfolios, programs, and again, portfolios is a matter of just selecting one, but we'll do that later when we go through the whole setting up your portfolios in the demo as well. Besides this, we can have stage gate elements added here. So to get to the next stage, you have to do a documentation of your gate 1 review or review document. You can also tell in advance when you are expecting to go through a gate. That is something that many have requested. So I'm expecting to be ready for gate review on the 30th of April. But when it comes to business case, I'm ready to go through that gate when it comes to 19th of May. In execution, and then I can just keep going. So we sort of predict when we're going to go through gates without having done a schedule yet, because this is really relevant for those stakeholders or steering group members to know what to approve on and what to expect on the certain dates. Then I can go in and have checklists such as we have cleared goals defined, we have a stakeholder analysis, a communication plan, and always hit the save button because it's just half a second and it's saved. When it comes to the methodology used, I think it's really important to cover that we can do traditional and agile work or hybrid. Traditional means having effort in hours, finish date, start date, percent complete. Agile for some means also creating what is called an epic or somewhat of a work entity in Jira or DevOps. So this is an example on how easy we can actually connect two worlds, because right now I can just click yes. And when I hit save, it will probably take 30 seconds before it's done, but then it will add a direct link right here to where things will now be broken down further inside DevOps. Also useful for reporting because this is sort of your joining of data. But let's go back to traditional. Here we go. So in this example, let me just give it some strategic relevance, which I can do like this or with the use of my finger. That's why it has these small gauges there and hitting save. Then let's imagine we now have to do a schedule. So if I go to the schedule, this is now where you will see the new project really kick in, because it will open up in what we can almost call an iframe so that you can stay inside your Power App and quickly go in and create that phase you need, phase 1, activity A, activity B, and activity C, and maybe even at a milestone, and group it by phase. And for those of you familiar with project, you know the drill. It's sort of the same thing. We can assign it to myself, but we can also assign it to others. And if we assign it to someone else, for instance, Lydia, then in this case, it will tell that she's not part of the group of security settings for this project. So if you add her, she will be part of the group, which means that now we can use this group in Microsoft Teams to manage security. But it also means that Lydia can actually go into the exact same project plan and at the same time as me work in it, and go, for instance, to the board and say, I'm done, not done, all those things. So the era of sitting in a project plan, working alone as a project manager, is not over, but it could be over. So if you want people to work together with you on your plan, that is now supported with up to 20 people at the same time, because we don't have save, we don't have check-in, and we don't have check-out. And also something that will work out of the box, right inside from Microsoft Teams. And allow people to stay in teams, especially if they're just team members of certain projects. So besides this one, we can also have what is called the board view. But before I go there, let me just show you the few other columns we have. We have percent complete, bucket. So as you can see, it's been really trimmed. We don't have 150 different columns to be added. We have what we see that are often used by most project managers. So we can quickly go in and say the starting date will be here and the finish date will be not today, but maybe next week. We can also add percent complete by just writing 50%, or we could go into the board overview and have different buckets such as HR and IT and drag drop our tasks around like this. When we've done that, when we then go back to the grid, you'll see in real time that all the buckets are now added to the different tasks. And we can also go to timeline where you have a more standard approach to managing your tasks. In this case, you would probably need some start and finish date. So let's just add that here, and maybe that one will end there. Then this one will start here and maybe end there. That's fine. So when I go to the Gantt view again over here, we now can zoom out a little bit and see a very simplistic Gantt chart. I really like the style of this actually, because when you hover over, you'll see immediately the start and finish date like this. And you can also just drag and drop your constraints like this. So finish to start, and then get a new calculated project plan. If you click on it as well, you can also see down here what it depends on, effort completed, effort remaining. So it's not just planner, there's a bit more to it when it comes to the new project. And all of the stuff I'm doing here, when I go back to the project overview and just do a brief refresh of data, you'll see all the summarized totals coming right into here. Now we're 23% done, 39 days of planned work, start and finish date, effort in hours, all those things. So ready for timesheet hours to be captured and put in as well. On the project team side of things, the new project also gives you the capability of showing first and foremost the team members and when they are planned to start and finish their work across all the tasks. But this view we can tailor so that you can add, for instance, unique cost rates by just creating a new column, so that you can have cost rates per project per resource, which is again something that we weren't able to support in the past, but it's now just a thing out of the box that you can have. And that can calculate very accurate total hours and remaining hours in terms of money, more than just the hours. Next up, we have financials. And again, here we have a grid that has been added. It's very simplistic in this setup, but it could be tailored to different needs, of course. So here you can go in and say 50,000 added for CapEx, 50,000 here, and then tap your way through. And on the OPEX side, maybe 25,000 and 25,000 and tap your way through. Same thing for actual cost, and I think you get the point. And when you collapse the years, you'll see the sums. Same thing for these areas. So you can quickly get that overview and even having it show up in real time inside a chart that again can be expanded and further analyzed just using Power Apps, clicking here, drilling down to whatever's required, cost category, by a pie chart, and there you go. So all built into the tool, available in a second, real time all the way through. KPIs, as mentioned in the beginning, where I think that many have a need for something that's more simple than red, green, yellow. So here we have still different answers to give. So scope-wise, we are having the same scope, all is good. Cost is still on budget. Same thing here, same thing there, same thing there. But imagine if just some of them or one of them becomes red. Then we can, in real time, even before we hit save, have the overall status be changed. So when I click, cost is now overrunning at 10%. Notice on what happens here, I click here, and immediately in real time, the project now has an all-up score of red. I need help. So this way of making sure that data changes the overall status in real time, I think is super useful as well, and something that, again, we've been looking forward to sharing today, that we now have these capabilities. Deliverables and dependencies, I'll just touch briefly, but I think it's something that was in the past with Project Online, but maybe not really useful for the most, because something was stored in the SharePoint sites, something was stored somewhere else, and linking those deliverables to your real tasks in your project plans was sort of complex. So now let me show you how that will be worked or done here, and I think less than 20 seconds. So let's imagine we want to produce a deliverable that other projects can depend on. We can create a deliverable by clicking. It brings up this simple view, my Boston deliverable. And I want this to be done around, let's say, 27th of May. The related project is obviously Boston demo, but the task I'm gonna relate it to, I just search here, and in real time we can see the task we just created, including activity C. So let's take activity C, and maybe add a description of the deliverable. So when I hit save, in real time, it creates the link and shows that I'm delayed, because it knows from the project plan we just did that this specific task we had been linked with right now has a finish date on the 19th of June, and the target date was the 27th. So I think this is super cool and something that, again, was not really possible in the past. Same thing for dependencies. I'm going to depend on other projects. So let's just write something. And then we can look through all the deliverables that are available. For instance, this release note package, and hit save. And not only do the linking, but also see if we are delayed or not. So imagine all of this data being available for your reports. You can now finally track across your projects if you're on time or not, but also based on deliverables and dependencies. So I really wanted to show that today because I think it's something as well that has been missing and that a lot of you have been looking for quite a while. Risk management wise. So the project experience of going here, creating a risk. Again, as you saw before, quickly the form pops up. You create your risk 1, 2, 3, add some description, a likelihood or probability, maybe an impact statement of high, a due date or whatever else you need. And here again, you could associate this with a task in the new project if you wanted to. I haven't added that, but that would just be a simple add the field on this form and you will have created the link. Save and close. The risk has been created and it shows up in real time in the risk matrix up here. So also super cool. Same thing applies for issues and changes where you can go in and create a change request. Again, super easy, click change. And then you can go in and create your change request. And of course have different categorizations, could be schedule, high priority, cost impact 50,000. Hit save and notice the approver is blocked from editing. That means that the project sponsor will always by default be the approver. So that person, in this case, I think that was Adele, she will now get an email automatically saying, please approve this change request. And for her, it means that she can go somewhere and get the full overview of all change requests that are going into her. Weekly status, and then we're almost done with the entire project management tooling right now. I know it's a lot to cover, but that's a matter of clicking new weekly status report. In this case, we've set it up for weeks. You could then have a predefined set of status report periods or just write week X 2020. When I hit save in real time, it again captures all the values that we've added, strategic score, budget, whatever you wanted, and groups it by the point in time when you took the snapshot. This is all available for Power BI as well, so you can do that trend analysis. And when I click refresh here, you can actually see that something is starting up as well, which is the report status. Because what I've done right now is that it, besides doing the snapshot, it also creates the PowerPoint to support the snapshot. So that when this is done, and that might take a minute or two sometimes, then you'll see from the overview of your projects right here what the latest status report is, because you can see that with a hyperlink. So for the Boston demo, this would be your most recent status report. Click here and go to that one pager describing what was the status when it was created. And do we have, for instance, a PowerPoint report available yet? And it's still not available because when it is, it will be shown right down here. And maybe this, if I click refresh, let's just see. Nah, not yet. We'll revisit it if we have time to do it at the very end. And on the front page again, you always have show charts as an availability to, or a way for you to easier find your data. So without searching up here, which you could do, you could also see it by planning mode. So traditional projects or hybrid projects or agile projects. You can also see the icon is changing. You could look at it from my top 5 projects by cost variance. So you would know what is the issue. That would be the water cleaning project, as we saw before. And again, always zoom in and get the full overview and drill down into that real-time information that you need. All the data is available, and then it's just a matter of selecting what you need. Could be owner, and then by columns, and then see, well, right now the owner, okay, I think I selected something wrong, but if I've set up my data correctly, it would have shown that breakdown. So back to the main page here. There we go. So that was part of the intro. If we then look at it from this perspective, I still have 10 minutes left. And then we have resource management as the next in line discipline. So it's not everyone who's in need of this, but as Jeff mentioned, I have to admit that in the past 2 months of Corona or COVID-19, this is probably the most requested feature that we can help customers bring to life. So one example of this is that we go back to Boston demo and we use the tab called Team Planner up here. So this tab is where I can do the request, which some prefer to do way before they do the project breakdown and allocation of resources. So clicking here shows you the other app we've made called Team Planner, again, which works inside here, but also right inside Teams. So then I can go in as a project manager, and based on the duration of the project, or change that if I need to by just using the drag drop function, or do my requests in, for instance, weeks, months, or years, I can go in and add selected roles. And in this case, let me just look at it. Sorry, I just logged in as a line manager. Let me just change the view like this. That's the view I wanted. So clicking here brings me all the roles that I'm allowed to request. So I can go in and say, consultants, I would like to get a consultant from the Netherlands. Drag the person in. It's a generic person, of course. And do the same thing for a developer like this. And then I can do it for a manager. Then I can go back and add hours or FTEs that I would like to have. That could be 40 hours of this and 80 hours here and 30 hours there and 20 hours. And then maybe 50 hours, 50 hours and 50 hours and 50 hours. And we'll add 20 hours of consulting all the way through, except for July, that's go live. So that's 100 hours. I can also add comments that the line manager can receive. And I can even go in and rename the label. So if this is not what is most making, describing what I'm requesting, then you could do this instead, saying I need help for delivery A or something like that, and have that also being saved and made available for Power BI reporting as well. So this was the project manager experience. There is no save, no publish. It's saved already. So as a line manager, I would go into Teams. So I'm just changing my hat now. Open up down here, perhaps the custom add-in called Team Planner, the add-in for Teams. It's the same app, but it's showing it from a resource manager's point of view. And that means that, let me just switch to resource manager here. That means that we have requests, allocations, and the free capacity, because we don't want to have people working double up unless it's planned, of course. So if I click on the left side here, we should be able to find the project called Boston. Let me just see if it can load. There we go. So I'm just write Boston here. There we go. And if we add that, we can see that there's a request from my business unit of these 3 different roles, including the custom text, including the notes that were created. And I can even write back to that person. And again, this is available for reporting all these comments. Then I can go in and say, find me that resource that should be doing this work. If I have it available, I can have favorite resources and I can have other resources. You can pin them. And even before I allocate resources, I can see where they're sitting, in this case, in Denmark, what role they have and how available they are in that period of time that we are looking into right now. So Christian should have time to do work because he's only 44% allocated. So I'm going to drag him in and replace the manager up here as an example. And then I can write that he should work 50 hours there and 50 hours here. But notice what happens. He is now in deficit of 50 hours and 17.5 hours because he's doing other projects in that period of time. So as a line manager, to fix this issue, rather than going in and out of different projects or spreadsheets, I would just click on Christian's name, get the full overview of what he's working on, look into how I can balance him better, for instance, by turning down this particular project to 50 hours, which means he now has free capacity. Then I could go back to my project, and everything is saved in real time. So now he's not over-allocated and he's allocated to this project. And I could do the same thing for the next in line person by drag dropping. Again, an individual could be manager of this kind down to this level, doesn't matter. I know I'm right now replacing a manager with a developer, but actually in this company, it sort of works quite often. Writing 40 hours and 80 hours, this is all fine. And then we could just keep going. We could even have externals showing up here, so that you could do planned work on them as well, like in this case. So that's sort of the whole idea about Team Planner, is that it's super easy, has been made for resource managers, by resource managers, and to replace your spreadsheets. And everything from inside Teams in real time with no save or publish or other hassles that we've seen in the past. Reporting wise, from a resource manager, you can always use built-in reports inside the tool, so that if you click, for instance, on allocation report or this one, it will showcase the reports as you saw before, but in this context. So some would prefer to go inside here because they're working in projects. It makes sense, being a PMO function of some kind. But for a line manager, it really doesn't make sense to go into a project management tool. So probably they would just stay here, but access the same reports and see the same data. So one truth, all up, single source of data. And with that being said, we only have one thing left, I would say, which is sort of to showcase to you, also with the time I have, what we call strategic planning. So going back to the app, clicking home. Then again, we obviously have our portfolios and programs. So if we go into portfolios, we can briefly go in, get the overview of all running portfolios, and even create a new one called the Boston portfolio. So as you can see, a portfolio is an entity just like a project is. So I can write Boston portfolio 2020, for instance, or just portfolio like this. We can also have KPIs for that. We can have strategic linking. For instance, this supports Better Workplace. We also have a discussion board down here so that others can collaborate with me on adding documents, for instance, which is as simple as clicking there, finding the document or the picture, adding some text, hitting note, and then it's stored together with the entity. That's how simple it is to add a document. We can also have financial details, so we can set up a bucket for saying, let's spend 300,000 on CapEx in 2020, 50,000 on OpEx, and 0 for the remaining periods. And then we already have now a budget for the different years for this portfolio, even split by CapEx and OpEx. Then next up, we can go in and say, in terms of projects, which projects or programs are related to the portfolio. Then I can go in and create new projects or find existing projects. Of course, we have the Boston demo project, and adding that will then add it to the portfolio. So when I go back to the portfolio overview, I can quickly click on project budgets and get the roll-up cost of my Boston project, and the same thing for actual cost. It looks like it's not associated just yet with the project. Let me just go back, sorry, and make sure that the relationship has been created, because we might have added it to another portfolio early on, just to be sure on that. No, it is here. It's the budget that I don't have yet. Sorry, I just need to roll up the data. What is happening in Power Platform is that once an hour, all these roll-ups will kick in. But if you can't wait for that, you can always do what I'm doing, which is just to click and then get the data real time, so fresh data. So with that being said, let's go back to the portfolio overview. Then when we click here now to sort of trigger the roll-up, you'll see that data is now coming in. So that when the portfolio managers once in a while goes in and opens up the view, they will see that they've spent right now, in this case, this amount of money, €500,000, versus the maximum allowed of money, which was 300,000. So not good. And that will also be available for the charts on the front page, like here. So when you can go in and look at on the Boston portfolio, this is a very good example of this being real time. We now have this amount of money added in terms of the budget, and we have this amount of money in terms of forecast. This is showing the forecast, not the project budget. So same thing applies for programs, that a program can be created quickly. And again, so the Boston program, just skip the rest here and link that to a portfolio as well, if you wanted that to happen, and hit the save button, and then we can later on roll up all the projects that are part of this program and make sure it doesn't double count when it goes into the portfolio. Because finally we have an engine now that can look into that a project that belongs to a program doesn't roll up the budgets into the portfolio, the program does. So those sorts of rules are obviously part of the solution as well. And if you then, as a final thing to show before I sort of let go of this presentation, if you want to again showcase this somewhere else, let's first of all see if the Boston demo now is ready for, or the status report is ready. It's not ready yet. That's annoying. Sorry for that. So instead, I'm just going to click on it and then see if I can trigger it myself. If I can select it like this. Then up here, you'll get new capabilities or features when you select a project. For instance, exporting to Word. And at least I can show you now how fast this is. So if you have a Word document or PowerPoint, you could click, and again, in hopefully a second, now that I'm triggering it myself, get it merged with your template and available inside Word with the data that we all just created together. Description, owner, I just created a simple sample report here. Budget, ROI, budget, actual cost, the data we just added, including risk elements, whatever you have, all available to put inside Word. And then I'm going to do what is called, I guess, a mic drop in some sense, because now it's 4:15. So that's when I have to round myself off. And so I'm going to stop presenting right now, or maybe not just right now, but maybe here. We have 1 minute left. So if there are any questions, or I'm looking at the producer here, then I can take a few before we hand it over to our customer case.
We do have some questions here. So the first one is, how do you manage baselines with this solution?
Yeah. Well, there are baselines of the schedule and baselines for everything. So for everything, which also includes the schedule, so that's the easy answer, That's what I showed when it came to the weekly status here. So the baselines are stored down here. So for each of these weekly statuses, we can select what data should be snapshotted and how often. It could also run every week. So I would say that the past of having 11 baselines in project would now be having unlimited baselines. We can capture more or less everything and store it. So that's your snapshot / baseline engine. Okay.
Wait, more questions? I don't know if you want to wait until the end or if we should take
Let's take it at the end then. So without further ado, I'm now gonna hand it over to Morten Nielsen from FLSmidth, who at least in the Nordics is a very well-known company, probably not that big outside of Denmark and the Nordics. So I'm gonna also allow Morten to explain just a little bit about what FLSmidth is all about.
Thank you very much, Peter. Seems like already you've incorporated quite a lot of new features since we had our workshop beginning of December. So when you see my next steps later on in this presentation, I think a couple of steps will be added in there later as well. So yeah, I've been quite excited to share the experience we have done here with the Power PPM platform. Personally, I'm quite pleased with the job we've done so far. So look forward to present it to you as well. So just a little bit about FLSmidth. We're a 130-year-old company. We're employing a bit more than 11,000 people across the world. Last year we had a turnover or revenue of just above 20 billion DKK. That's 2.8 billion euro. What are we doing? We're doing cement and mining facilities, equipment, and wear park. So we're an engineering company, and that also goes for the culture. It can be difficult to work with at times. What are we supplying? We're supplying big equipment, really big, and it's really complex customer projects that we're running. And often we're running these projects in remote locations as well. So it's really adding complexity to the projects we're doing for customers. So I joined FLSmidth just about 3 years ago. Monday, it's 3 years ago. I was brought in to spearhead our supplier relations program. So not exactly a PMO function or similar. We have globally 11,000 suppliers whom we buy for 13 billion DKK. So that's almost 2 billion euro. And we have a huge complexity. We are an engineering company, so we are engineering everything. We did buy 760,000 different item lines last year, and a third of these were unique. So, and that's what I'm being responsible for. How we identify new suppliers, how we onboard them, maintain them, how we select the ones we want to develop, how we develop, and how we manage these projects that we're doing together with the suppliers, and of course also how we optimize our portfolio and terminate suppliers. So yeah, again, been with the company for 3 years, and as you'll see in the next slide, very early identified that we had a gap on the activities, not only the activities that we're doing together with suppliers, where everybody were doing activities, suppliers, of course, a good thing, but when you have 3 or 4 people doing exactly the same activities with some of the big suppliers, it doesn't really showcase FLSmidth as being in control. So quite early, I got the challenge to introduce a structured approach to prioritize and manage internal projects activity in FLSmidth. So this not only being scoped to the work we do together with suppliers, but it's actually being meant as a framework for all the internal projects we do in FLSmidth. So even though we're really, really good in doing external customer projects, we're not really good in doing internal optimization projects. So we spearheaded this or launched the project. And as you see here, we go all the way back to 2017. So right after I was hired in, I reached out to Projectum and say, hey, we're not in control here, please help out. And we had some discussions. We did scoping of the setup of the system. We scoped everything in because seems like there was a lot of solution that seems fairly easy to incorporate, but also like things we needed, talking to different stakeholders. Of course, you come up with a lot of requirements. Again, being an engineer company, we have a lot of good ideas. So we signed the beginning of 18 with Projectum. We launched. We had the system complete just about the summer break 18, but then for various reasons, it just took some time until we were really ready to launch it internally. Part of that is having the resource available. I was taking care of this project of managing projects, and I have other tasks as well. So we definitely needed a dedicated resources. So we launched March. I spent a lot of time on it. It went okay. We were on the Project Online platform using Power BI for visualizations. A fairly good combination, but in the period between we selected Project Online and until we launched, a lot of things have happened. Microsoft introduced Teams and all the different apps in Teams. A lot of people started using Planner in Teams. So introducing this not so intuitive software was a bit uphill. And of course, we found out that we have just we hadn't really limited our scope to success here. So we were trying to grasp too much and expecting too much of a really immature organization. So toward the end of 2019, to add further to this, we migrated our SharePoint solution from client into cloud. And it brought lots of issues for our Project Online solution as well. It actually meant that we decided to stop any use of it. It was long waiting hours, long saving hours. It was the application just closing down without saving the stuff people did. So we decided to close down, and we're really not that sure on how to proceed from here. And then luckily I had Projectum reached out asking how we're doing, saying we may have something that could be of interest to you. So I shows up with the Projectum, bringing along our IT stakeholders, and they are presenting kind of a beta version of the Power PPM that you have just seen today, and showing off the new Microsoft project tool. Coming back, of course, we said this is really the way to go if we want to proceed in that direction. So fairly fast, we called back to Projectum and said, please book some time for this in your calendar. And the time became first week of December last year. So we set aside just 1 week. The initial idea were to make a pilot in this week. So to make a proof of concept, is this really the right way to go? And it ended up that we actually configured, or Projectum configured more or less a workable solution within that 1 week. So really good work and really fast and easy configuration of the Power PPM platform. And then another thing happened. We actually got a resource approved. So in February, we had a person transferred in to manage our project management organization, or the activities we have on the portfolio management. So March we launched, and that is what I'm going to show you now. So Peter already covered a lot of this, so now you're just going to see the Power PM that Peter showed, just in our version, and what we have included in the first step here. And you also notice that we actually reduced the scope quite a lot. And those of you who have been through a process like this before, it probably comes as natural, but we're launching this, the necessities, and then we're going to add as we go along. So the Power PPM is very much for us meant as a kind of a project database where we host all the information related to a project, and where project managers only go in and update the status of their projects. So as Peter also showed, here's our homepage or launch page of our solution. Seems to be highly customized, and we're quite pleased to being able to adapt some FLSmidth feel here, even though this is a very much out of the box solution. And as you see, we have different links over here. I like the option of pinning your own project, so you can just click the drop down here, and then you actually have your projects ready available. You have links here. We've included links that goes to the same as the big buttons here. So you have, of course, have this selection pane throughout the application. We have links to the reports we're doing. So all the interface to other stakeholders is done in Power BI. So that's where we're presenting the information from our project database. We've created a team site for exactly this, where we capture information. There's a link to brief introduction training material. There's wikis about how you do it, and there's it's also where we capture the good ideas that our users have. So this project overview, we're merely using this to identify the project or to find the project that we want to work on. So not really a lot else. So we identify the project, we click the project, and we go into the project page here. And yeah, very similar to what Peter showed you, we have our own stage gate model here. In top, when you're moving between the stages here, you're provided a different set of requirements. So as Peter also showed, you can go in and schedule in advance here when you want to have the gate approval meeting. Once it's approved, you click yes here. You can, in this case, we're ending a project, so it goes into realization. So a lot of our projects are cost savings, so that's the main focus in here. So it goes into realization, so you have to put in an agreement number whenever it's a sourcing project. And you have to kind of check that you're updated the savings potentials you have in here, and then you just click next and everything's good. Down here, the basic information of the project. Again, depending on what you select, it will show the relevant fields for your project, so that you're not bothered with a lot of fields that you have to decide on whether you should complete these or not. And yeah, you see the different tabs here. Peter also browsed through as part of the Power PPM platform. So we go into the financials. So this is what we have decided to include. We are not having a cost focus. So the actual project cost is not going to be in our phase one here. So we have a savings focus. So here you type in the different savings you have from the different regions, and you can even specify this further. You calculate the total potential, and in many cases you also put in a target if your target is not the potential we have. So a status page, as Peter also showed, we have two indicators showing if we're on time or not, and then of course it adds up into an overall indicator as well, and you can add your comment here. It's just one comment for all the indicators. And in this in the team here, we have a link to our team site. So if there's created a team site, we link it in here. And of course, you'll also be able to see the team members in here. So that's actually it for the database what we have. These are all the necessary informations that we need to capture. There's a bit more in the different stages, but we really tried to limit here to be able to get the success. People don't want to spend a lot of time here, especially with the maturity level where we are at, where people are used to doing 2 lines in an Excel. So this is what we've included so far. And then, of course, there is the project management. So Microsoft project tool. If I just go back here, you see that you access it through the task here, as Peter also showed, and you have the possibility to open it up full screen up here, open in project. And this is where we are updating the schedule. It's where we're building the schedule and updating the schedule. And this is one of our schedules. Peter been in there. You create your tasks. You create them subtasks. You can create milestones. You put in the duration. You add people. You update the progress. And everything is just running quite smooth in here. And you're not experiencing long saving hours or anything. Whenever you click back, everything is updated and saved. And it's fairly easy to go in, just click here if you have completed a task. And it, of course, provides these different modes of visual access to your project plan, as Peter also already described, and some are really keen on this one. Some really like the agile ones, if they get used to working with planner and teams. So they like, and in here you can create your own buckets, but you can also select one of these where you look at finish date or progress or something. So that's some good pre-built buckets in there as well. And of course the Gantt chart, and Peter already showed how easy it is to relate different tasks, extend the duration, and actually do real project planning in here where you actually have the visual. And this is what we see a lot of our people are working with. So that's all about our project database. So this is where we are hosting and updating the information. And to visualize it, we have the portfolio management here. So I'll not spend a lot of time with this. This is made in Power BI. We have our entry page. We have our overview of active projects. So I'll just, you can, those of you that have been working with Power BI, you know you can tailor make this as you like based on the data we have in the database in the Power PPM. So what are the next steps for FLSmidth? We have still some of the Power BI reportings we want to complete. There's a lot of requests on further reports. So as people get used to working in this and see the possibilities, we are rolling out in the entire supply chain. Right now we have scoped it to a limited number of people. So within the next month, we'll have it fully rolled out to the supply chain global. We are about 2,000 employees in the supply chain currently. We would like to add resource management and the cost management in here as well. I'll just touch some of the issues there in a second. Risk management, you saw the application in the Power PPM platform. We would like to include that, and some of the features that Peter showed today, we would like to include these as well. And as in the very early, I said in the early presentation, the idea is still to roll this out as the internal project tool in FLSmidth. So hopefully we can start adding new business units to the solution as well. A bit of pro and cons here. So we knew we were first movers, and we knew that there are some issues when you're first movers, but overall it proved to be quite a mature platform. We're seeing smaller hiccups once in a while. We found working together with IT, it seems like the license setup from Microsoft has troubled us a little bit. What kind of license do we need for what, and when we want people accessing and when we want them to be part of a lookup. So it's been a hassle getting this sorted out. Then I said we want to do the task and resource management, but right now in the schedule, you're limited that the employees or the resources you add to a task needs to work full-time, 100% on that task for the duration of the task. And that's not the way we're working. I don't think a lot of project organizations are working like that. It's in the roadmap for Microsoft, and we're really looking forward to having this feature, which will enable us to start looking at resource management, but it will also enable us to look at the cost management of the project. So how many hours are people actually putting into a project? We want to do more integration with Teams. Right now, it's I'm still getting requests for people that are creating a schedule and then comes up and asks, do you want to create a new team? They create a new team, add a lot of team members in the schedule, and then they go to Microsoft Teams and they don't find the team in there. So, and there's still the integration here with Teams could be a lot better, and I'm really looking forward to that, because it's again, it seems to be in the roadmap of Microsoft. And then internal IT maturity. So we were not matured in this area. We're using the Power Platform. We're using Microsoft Dynamics 365 for our customer relationship management system. We are having field service, but in a very secluded area. So when we started getting onto the same platform, that also created some issues. But luckily, there's a lot of pros as well. The setup here, we spent a week. It was extremely fast. Of course, we had a lot of the scoping and everything done before that week, but it's extremely fast to set up, and it's very easy to adapt the solution to the needs we have. And we're even doing it ourselves to a limited degree right now. So when we have small needs and things, we're doing this and this, and this has to pop up then. Creating processes in here, creating approval flows, and the user friendliness. It's as you see, it's app-like. People find it very easy. The help functions are very intuitive and easy to access. We have this mouse over that lets you give information of the most relevant stuff. System performance. Peter showed live. You just click back and forth, it saves. No waiting time in there. So really good. And of course, we've had good support from Projectum after the week as well, with all these small troubleshooting, really fast response time from them. So thank you very much. And I think that's it from my side.
Thank you, Morten, for a really good presentation. Also supporting, lots of the elements I brought into play, and only happy to hear that, that some of the new things we've been doing in the past few months are relevant to you. So let's make sure we update the solution as well, so you can get some of that put into play. So there might be questions for you right now, actually, and I've tried to also answer lots of them. There's quite a lot of questions while you were presenting, and there are two things I want to show just live before we just round it off with the next steps and the open Q&A. So that's based on two of the questions that sort of popped up a few times. One of them is project types. Can we have different types of projects? And there's also one looking into how can we capture and control the sum of different projects. So let me just briefly share my screen, and again, looking at the producer to ensure that I get the nod and go ahead before I show anything.
Hang on a second.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So just briefly, as you saw in my intro slides, the new project also has something called roadmaps, and I didn't touch upon that, but I think it's quite relevant to see how this can be put into play in this context. If we go ahead and open up the expansion program up here, then you'll notice that it has something called a roadmap link. And if we click on that one, it opens up a roadmap. So roadmap 2020. And what you see here is, if I just zoom out again, is the sum of all projects. That was a lot of zooming in, sorry. Here we go. So different projects added into different rows. So each row is a project that has its own owner. And then showcasing what's going on with that specific project in terms of tasks, milestones, and comparing that to some key dates up here. So I can add key dates by just clicking. So key date, and then I can go in and select a certain point in time, December 15th. And I can even add status manually saying things are on track or not. This we can also impact by using flows that updates these statuses, and then add it right here. Then for this row, for instance, I can go in and say I have a row called X time plan. That could be my project row, just to give you all an example. And I can then connect that to a project from either Azure or project, the new project that is. And up here we have the Boston demo project, luckily. So selecting that will then right now set up a flow that makes sure that updates from this project can be injected into this roadmap. So it does that for us by clicking connect. Once that has been applied, we can then go in and find the relevant tasks as we just created them together and have them shown inside the roadmap. So tasks are available for a free text search, or you can use the VBS structure and look into, for instance, phases, and then say I want to add this one, this one, this one, maybe everything actually doesn't matter, and add that into my roadmap like this. And then I can go in, let's just zoom in a little bit, and update this if I want to do it manually, saying this is at risk or this is on track, whatever it is, and even open details, which sends me to that specific task in that specific project. So getting to that task is as easy as just a click, and we end up arriving on the task level inside the corresponding project plan. So that's what we call roadmaps. And again, these are even more relevant, I think, when they're added onto a program level or maybe even a portfolio level or a strategy level, so that management can pull what they typically would produce in PowerPoints. The other question was around project types. So besides the methodology used to create a project and break down the tasks, that was this method called traditional, agile, or hybrid. Clicking on Agile, we set it to create an Azure DevOps link. It has done that now. So when I click here, it sends me off to Azure DevOps and shows me that the rest of this work will be broken down over here. And as you can see, it already has the link, the name of the project, it's created as an epic, and so forth. And this can be pushed back into here so we can see features planned, features done, whatever needs to be rolled up from your Agile systems. But besides that, the project types as it is in Project Online, the enterprise project types is also something we had to make available because that's not just standard. So that's part of Power PPM. So up here we have project type. And if I select, for instance, the small one, we can completely adjust the screen we're looking at, the steps we have to go through, so the process and the fields. So now it's a very simple project with 3 stages, much more lightweight approach to managing your master data, but still having a project plan. And then switching back to large gives you then, just discard the changes, gives you the original longer stage gate model with all the different fields. So just wanted to touch upon that because I saw that that was some questions that were related to that. So project types is a yes, we can do that. And then just for the record as well, with the time we have available, then what if wise, even though it's upcoming, I just wanted to show you that if I click on the what if scenario, you'll get the early prototype here, where the point is that we'll be able to pull in information in real time, looking at projects that are running or, well, not running, so above or below the line. This is one line and another one. We can then say this one should be added to the view like this, or maybe extend it in terms of time or move it in time. And then we can open up Power BI and just adjust it, as you can see, and then in real time see the result from the changes we're doing up here. So for instance, pushing this one to here and this one to there, you can then see down here we have a loading symbol because now it's refreshing the data in real time and bringing back the new values into the charts as you just saw right now. So now we are completely overspending in this month. So we also have scenarios. So we'll have different scenarios we can create and store and use for comparisons later on, also in Power BI. So yes, we are completely on top of a need for having what if scenarios, but we really wanted to do it with default Power BI experience as well. So rather than just creating everything from the ground up. So that's upcoming. And if I go to my work, we also have, for the record, areas. So the administrator can go here, for instance, and setting up currencies and conversions, or looking at all risks or all issues across everything. It could be my work experience where I have my timesheets or my projects, my tasks, my change requests. So here's an example of a timesheet where the Boston demo is already there because it's created and I'm allocated, and I can just quickly add some hours, and I can hit the save and submit button. If I go to change requests down here, I can look into all changes that are impacting me where I have to do an approval. Those are the ones, and I can even show a chart of these changes, looking into when they were created and for how long they have been on hold or whatever it is. And then I can obviously go in and approve them if I am allowed to, or reject them, and save that, and then the PM will get notified as well. Sorry, that was the wrong button. So those was just some few things I wanted to cover since we now have some time left. So back to round it off and open up the Q&A stuff. Let me just go here, and that was not the one. I have too much going on. Where is it? This one, sorry. So for next steps, first and foremost, on YouTube, we have a channel, which I think 56 videos or something in total, and some of them are targeted for Power PPM. And here you can get the full, also deep dive, more than today, on both that, but also Team Planner and many other items we have. We also have this one called, the powerppm.net landing page, where you can go in and read more about it, see the features, and also try it out or sign up at least for a trial. And that landing page looks something like this. So when you get here, of course, you can read about the features, how you do different things, but you can also request the trial. So just fill in the information and submit, and somebody will get back to you typically within a day with login details for what I've shown, lots of at least what I've shown today. And pricing wise, that's not a secret. Our solution called Power PPM is sold per environment. So again, typically you have an environment only, and that's $1,500 USD a month, and that's it. So nothing complicated about that. And then I think we can open up for the Q&A. We tried to answer most of the questions throughout the presentation, and if there are others, then please bring them to life now, because I've stopped sharing. So I'm just gonna fold it down. There were some questions to FLSmidth, and I think I can see Morten is responding. Maybe if you want to, Morten, you can speak it out loud if you're up for it. We need to unmute you, Morten, just a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. No, I was just looking at the later one here with us having both dynamic CRM with the Power platform, and probably you're better in answering that. But yes, it did cause some issues us having the same platform, and of course having an isolated platform that was working only for a set of users before, and all of a sudden a complete different set of users comes into the same platform. I think that was at least something that they haven't thought about in IT before.
Yeah, I can also elaborate that you're right. If we use the new project in the same environment as with the rest of your Dynamics solutions, then we have to think through which roles and securities setups to use. If it's something we create, or if we inherit it from whatever is going on there already. But typically, we see that project managers, portfolio managers, PMO functions, those groups are not present already in a CRM system. So that's something we bring in. And all these roles are then connected to Azure Active Directory, also at FLS or FLSmidth, so that when users are added to a certain group, they can pop up and get access to the system. So sort of following normal procedures. One thing though is that the new project only works inside what is called the default environment of Power Apps, which is probably not where most of your dynamic solutions would be anyways. But that's how it is currently. We do expect in the future, don't know when necessarily, but in the near future at least, that we'll be able to add the new project entity into other environments. So to sort of completely isolate, for instance, Department A from Department B. But to solve that today, it's not really that complicated. We use filtering or business units to tag which person belongs to which business unit. And then based on the business unit, you only see certain data sets or certain forms or projects or risks or whatever it could be. So you can always security-wise fix it, but it's a little bit more complicated than yeah, when you have dynamics already, for sure, because you have to understand the infrastructure. And then there are no more questions, I think, right now. We'll just give it a few seconds because we still have minutes to go.
Peter, this is Jeff with Microsoft. I just wanted to comment on your multiple dynamics environment with Project for Web. And then obviously some of our clients historically have Project Online. And to Morten's comment, that adds to the complexity of which licenses are available for which users. You know, starting from a native environment, it's actually very straightforward of who gets subscriptions to which product. But in a mature environment where perhaps either previous products around Project have been used, previous trials or use cases around Power Apps had been used, or in your case where a Dynamics platform is involved, there is an opportunity there to create confusion of who is subscribed to which products. And that's something that every Microsoft seller will help you work through. Our goal is not to be redundant in what you're paying for. It's just to identify what you own and where the new environment will exist. One announcement that was made recently is that in a new Project for Web environment, in a traditional Office 365 tenant, the viewer rights are now available for most all Office 365 users. So is a very casual user would be able to view Project for Web type data even without any incremental subscription. So that's something directionally we're going to, is to make more people in the organization visible to the tasks that exist either in Teams or Project for Web. So Morten, one of your comments about the confusion, I acknowledge that. And also Microsoft's trying to make that casual viewer thing a little bit less expensive, or in many cases free, with a traditional Office 365 subscription. So we're hearing you loud and clear and are trying to simplify things.
Thanks, Jeff, for elaborating on that. It's a good point, and I'm happy to hear that the team members, to some extent, will be able to soon also see the project plans, maybe even without having purchased the project, if they have the right Office 365 subscription. That would be great. Great. And we'll give it then maybe 1 more minute, and if there are no more, we have more questions.
From Jesper. I don't know if you see it.
I can see it now, yeah. If Project for Web only work in our default tenant environment, then I'm not able to create a sandbox environment and try it out with CDS. That's sort of true. On the other hand, you can now go in and create a complete new tenant with Power Apps and CDS. And that's how we also spin up your trials. So if you request a trial with us, you'll get it within typically half a day or something. And that will be a different tenant. So Microsoft supports these tenants that you can create. So you can definitely get to try it out way before putting it into production. It's also how we build the system before we put it in to your production system. We can do that outside of your systems. And I can see I got a thumbs up. So great. And I have to scroll down. I can see it's not scrolling down. Yeah. Then I guess it's not advised to have PWA and Power PPM at the same time. Good question. I don't see necessarily there's an issue in that at all. We do have others who have that set up actually, where some have migrated already and some are waiting. From a resource management perspective, it's always tricky that you don't want to have different resource pools for sure, because then the same person can count twice in terms of capacity. So for resources, we have to treat them quite carefully. But from a scheduling perspective, it's not really an issue, sorry, at all. Unless if you can further elaborate your question. And then are there any limitations in terms of number of projects, tasks, business units? Well, projects, as far as I understand, is up to I think 30 million. I don't really think there's a hard limit there. Tasks-wise, I think it's set to 500 right now by Microsoft. That might be open for change in the future, but I think that's where it's set right now. Business units and users, I'm pretty sure not, because again, this is relying on the backbone of Dynamics and the 20 years of that product being in business. So I think the only limitation you should think of right now would be in terms of tasks, where I guess it's 500 right now. And I also think that if you're out there and you think the tasks exceeds 500, then create what is called a user voice issue to Microsoft. There's a portal for that, so that the product group can monitor the features that you are requesting, and that's actually how FLSmidth also got some of their requests through. That was by explaining issues and then putting them into user voice, and the first release of that actually came in 3 months after. So please raise your voice on user voice if you want something to go through. It's 10 times faster than than writing emails to me. So do that. And then I can see that was the final one right now. So I think maybe we should round it off.
Yes.
And thank you all, especially to you, Jeff and Morten, for participating in this live event. And I'm also happy to see how many actually showed up. You never know in these virtual events. I'm still missing to see the real audience in front of me, but I'm sort of getting used to the tripod with the Logitech camera. But we'll have more of these webcasts coming up. So on projectum.com, you can find events, and we have quite a lot actually lined up with specific focuses, procurement systems, resource management, and different ways of working. And again, in the meantime, go in and request that trial, get it up and running, try it out, give us some questions. Same thing applies for Team Planner. So if you want to try out just the resource management part of it, you can do that as well. But then again, go to projectum.com and search for Team Planner and let us know. And until then, all of you, I hope you will stay in good health in these times of virus, and hopefully see you all in the future or in the near future. Thank you for watching, and goodbye to all of you.